anytime. Ask the Podcast Coach for August 17th, 2024.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music. It means it's Saturday morning. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from theschoolofpodcasting.com, and joining me right over there, it's not Jim Cullison. He's on special assignment. It is the one and only Chris Stone from castahead.net. Chris, how's it going, buddy?
Good, Dave. I'm trying to do my Jim Collison prom queen wave. How am I doing?
That's looking
Does
pretty good.
Does that work?
Yeah, it's
it
absolutely.
It's like I'm on a float saying hi to all the podcasters. Hello, podcast people.
You know,
I'm doing well. How are you doing, man?
Good. It kind of feels like I just saw you, like, I don't know, 3 days ago, something like that, down at the Podfest Meetup in Atlanta. So that was fun. It was probably, 60, 75 people, somewhere in there?
Yeah. Fun and fragrant.
Fragrant. Yeah. If you here's an interesting, first of all, being that you live in the lovely state of Georgia, is pot legal there? Because I'm thinking it must be.
It might as well be, I guess. It's still not legal while you're driving, but for whatever reason, it tends to be very fragrant on I-85 and 285 and Spaghetti Junction, which, do you know, Dave, little Atlanta trivia, do you know what Spaghetti Junction is?
I do not. I know Petticoat Junction, but I've never heard of Spaghetti Junction.
Okay, Petticoat
Junction. Very old reference, yes.
Yeah. Well, besides being a great Outkast song, Spaghetti Junction is where 85 and 285 hit. And that is like, there's highways that look like a pile of spaghetti right there. And so that's what they call Spaghetti Junction. It usually is gridlock no matter what time of day.
Yeah, because the interesting thing was, and this is not a reflection on Podfest. Podfest did not pick the spot, nor did Mark Deal. It was just somebody said, hey, we can do it here. And when you walked in, as we used to say at concerts, someone is brewing that special tea. You know, so
I didn't ran over a skunk.
I didn't realize I was going to be leaving the pod tour with a contact high. So that was that was interesting. But you know what is a better way to get high, of course?
Oh, yes.
Some little Morning Joe, maybe. And Chris, look at that. He came prepared. Oh, we got the overhead cam shot. Look at this. Oh, look. Is that a Jody Kringle mug? It is.
It is. And Jody is in the chat. I see. This is a fantastic coffee mug. And you know what's even more fantastic, Dave, is Jody Kringle.
That's right. And that coffee pour is brought to you. This is, I almost don't want to go to the other screen. It's so beautiful. Chris is such a video guy. But I can tell you, wait a minute, before we get to the official slide, when I say if you want to have something look good, I give to you the world's most ugliest business card. I don't know what I was thinking, putting this white thing in the middle of it. I'm sorry for my listeners, but I have School of Podcasting at the top. Now, the back of it looks good, right? It's got, hey, this is Dave Jackson, all this stuff. And I put this stuff, and for some reason, I didn't like black text on a yellow background, and I decided to put in, and if I had used Mark from podcastbranding.co, he would have said, Dave, that's going to look stupid, and he would have saved me. So anytime you want to look good, it doesn't just have to be artwork. It can be your website, or it could be a decent-looking business card that I now have, I think, 100 of or something like that. So podcastbranding.co. He'll do your artwork. He'll do a whole website, and you get to sit down with Mark one-on-one and say, look, this is what I'm trying to convey. My show is kind of spunky, and I'm talking about this or that. And then let his marketing brain go into like overdrive to make sure that what you're trying to do matches what you're putting in front of your audience. And as soon as I open up the box, I'm like, should have used Mark. What was I thinking? But he's awesome. He will give you the kind of stuff that you're just not going to get from some guy on Fiverr. So when you want to look good, there's only one place to go, and that, of course, is podcastbranding.co. Tell him Dave, Jim, Chris, and Jody said, we heard about you on the podcast review show. And, of course, the other sponsor that even though today we have Jody Kringle on the mug, we do want to say thank you to Dan, who sponsors Jim's mug, which is sitting somewhere getting dusty, and but it shouldn't be, because if you've ever watched a movie and it starts off, the screen goes black, based on a true story, and you ever want,
I'm trying to create compelling soundtrack here for you, Dave.
And at the end of the movie, you're like, man, that was an amazing story. Some of that seems made up. Well, there's one place to go, and that, of course, is based on a true story, podcast.com. And Dan, it's really cool because it's a movie show, right? So you've got your kind of Siskel and Ebert-ish kind of edge to it, but it's really a history show in a way because whatever was going on in the movie, you get to find out if that was actually true or not. So check it out, based on a true story, podcast.com. And for anyone who just went, oh no, yes, Dave has turned off his notifications. And on this machine, I'm going to close my email because that's usually the thing that gets me in trouble. So Chris sent you here, and over at castahead.net, if you need, talk about looking good. If you want to do some video shorts or video podcasting or just production, audio, and it's all over there. He slices, he dices, he even juliennes over at castahead.net. But anytime somebody gets like super deep into video, I'm like, okay, you've gone out of my depths. We need to go ask Chris. So one of the questions I get all the time is like, hey, because especially thanks to our good friends at YouTube, everybody thinks a podcast isn't a podcast until you have video. So if you had somebody that said, hey, I've got kind of a limited budget, I want to start a YouTube channel, I've been doing a podcast for a while, what should I get? Do you have any like recommendations for good but not super expensive, the budget plan, I guess we could say, for gear?
Yeah. I think you mentioned one time about when you were on Dealcasters, the show I co-host with my buddy Jim Fuse, that starting a podcast is about the cost of an Xbox. And I would say for video, especially now, you could do a lot with what you have, which includes one of these that's in your pocket, which is a smartphone. And they make right now, I mean, especially with the new iPhones, I mean, just incredible. We had a meeting with Roll.ai, and there's another piece of software called that Reincubate makes called Camo, where it takes your iPhone and makes it and turns it into a high definition camera. And it really is about, like, when you start doing video, I think a lot of audio podcasters, they forget that all that they've done for the past however many years and however many episodes, they have a huge advantage over those that are starting on both or just video, because they went through the whole thing of what to say, who you're talking to, what their problems are, all of that stuff. They've already been through all of those reps. Now it's just a matter of firing up a camera and getting used to seeing yourself on a video like we're doing right now, because your community actually that you've already built will just follow you over there. And a lot of times, especially for people who are getting to YouTube, they think they should just take what their audio podcast is and just make a video copy of it and just throw it into YouTube. But they forget that when someone goes to YouTube, either on their phone or wherever they're watching it, television, iPad, however they're enjoying YouTube, they have a certain expectation. So you have to give them the content for that particular platform. There's a different expectation for opening up Pocket Casts and Apple Podcasts, and it's a much more immersive thing. It could be they're driving or walking their dog or, doing whatever they're doing to enjoy audio podcasts, much more immersive, different. And for YouTube, attention spans like this, right? Even though people are enjoying 45 minutes, or in some cases like Joe Rogan, a 4-hour interview with David Lee Roth, it's not, they're unicorns. And so you have to create content. And I think you call it, Dave, the Conan O'Brien effect, which is you can put your entire show on audio only and just use YouTube for what people expect on YouTube to drive more listens.
Yeah, it drives me nuts, but it makes me listen to the audio podcast. So I remember, I think he was interviewing Ron Howard, and I love Ron Howard just because he makes great movies, and he's just a good interview, got a lot of stories. I mean, he's been Happy Days, Andy Griffith. He's a great guest.
Petticoat Junction and Happy Days, by the way. This is already everyone under the age of 48 is gone. But go ahead.
Later we'll be talking about the Waltons, yes, and
Good night,
Little
John
House
Boy.
on the Prairie, yeah. But I started to watch it, and I see where the clip is like 7 minutes and whatever seconds, and I'm like, wait a minute, I know Conan's show is longer than that, and so I Google like Conan O'Brien, Ron Howard, and I see there's like 5 clips, all 5 to 12 minutes long, and none of them are the actual full show. And I forget who it was. It might have been, I forget. It was whatever guest, and it was the actual full show. And all the comments said the same thing. Finally, the whole show on YouTube, and he's only done it once. And so we were talking in Atlanta that maybe one of the things I should think about with Ask the Podcast Coach is, as much as we get all the chocolatey goodness from people being live and we get all that views, and that's why you can't swap out a video, but maybe once this is done, make it, is it private? Is that the right phrase? When you want it to, like, it's public, but it's
unlisted.
Not. Unlisted is what I was looking for. And make it unlisted, send that to the awesome supporters, and then chop up the questions into bits that drive people to the audio podcast. And I was like, I like the way you think, Chris Stone. So it's the Conan O'Brien thing.
Yeah, and so much of what... It's different than Conan from this standpoint. So much of what, and Dave, I'm a huge fan of this show. I'd be watching this if it were Jim or, Jeff or
Right.
Jody in the co-host seat. But I know, watching it as many times as I've watched it, it can go in 128 different directions depending on what people want to talk about with the podcast coach. And so if you're creating an hour and a half long show and it's got 28 different really great nuggets, the chances that somebody searching for what you said in minute 48 and finding it and solving their solution is far less if you've just got it planted somewhere, maybe with a timestamp, maybe with a chapter. They might be able to Google it, and maybe if you've got some juice with Google and YouTube, it pops up in a search. But the better way to do it is to say, okay, for this 13 minutes, we're talking about this particular thing. Let me grab that, because you can do that in Descript really easily, and just pull that out and then treat that video just for that particular person, and it serves them in the spot that they're at. And then after a while, they're like, I don't know. I mean, I've gotten 4 different things from this guy, and now I'm just going to follow the show and I'm going to follow the podcast. And then you start to create more super fans, and while you're solving specific solutions.
Yeah, it makes sense, and Descript does make it really easy. You can just put the old scene thing and then just copy that scene and that whole 9 yards. And have you had a chance? I know I saw when I was in Atlanta the notification that Descript 7 came out. And
they changed their software?
I know, hard to believe.
Wow.
Yeah, I did see
Descript?
I did see where Ariel had said they were looking for people that classified themselves as beginners and advanced, and I'm not sure what that was about. But I did see her one comment about, yeah, I know. Somebody must have made a comment like, you guys change the software every half hour. And she said, if you use the web-based version, it's always up to date. Like, you're never going to use the web-based version of Descript and have it say, hold on, you need to refresh your browser. We just updated it. It's been 12 minutes. So I might look into that. I'm not sure how much power you lose by using the web-based version. That's a question I'll ask them at Podcast Movement next week, because I know they're going to have a booth. So
it slows things down too much for me. I need the external application, and so like if I'm in the middle of doing something and I got to go in and I got to power through creating some shorts, and I see that little thing, hey, a new version of Descript is ready, restart.
yeah.
I put it off. So I don't always restart it, and then because I'm afraid they're going to move the furniture around, and I'm going to walk into my apartment and go, where's my ottoman? I need to at least, let me get through what I got to get through. Then let me refresh. Let me get the new furniture, the new layout, and then make it feng shui for what I've got going on. Yeah, their new update, haven't played around with it that much just yet for that very, very reason.
Yeah.
But a lot of it, from what I understand, is for podcasters, and a lot of it has to do with what used to be called ad scenes by active speakers, and now they're calling it auto auto
something.
multicam or something like that, to where it does that, but it's essentially the same thing. So if you're identifying speakers and you do that, it will go full screen with whoever's speaking, and those scenes then you can go in and edit to make them different.
Is that showing up on the screen? I'm clicking on Gary's comment and I'm not seeing it appear.
I'm seeing it.
Okay, that's why. Because I don't know why, I just need to shrink this down, but I'm using the Elgato monitor so I can look at you. And the problem, I actually have my Elgato monitor almost tilted down so I can see the bottom of the screen. And when I was clicking on Gary's comment, it was still so there. Now I can see it at the bottom of the screen. Gary says, I'm excited about the new Room's multicam beta recording in Descript. And somebody else said it's very similar to something in Riverside, which that's something I have to go back and play with, because the last time I played with Riverside was actually on this show. I've done it as a guest, but when they first launched live streaming, we used it here, and Jim and I looked like we were, whatever, 16-bit, like Atari game from the 80s. It was horrible. And the whole thing was, hey, but the end video is going to look fine, but we're max headrooming out. There's another old reference. It's old reference day here. Every day is old reference day on Ask the Podcast Coach. Ask Ralph. So Ralph from Ask Ralph says, I use Descript every day, and it really is very good software, and it works very well. It produces an excellent product, and I'm a firm supporter, even with the changes. Yeah, the key ingredient there, notice what he said. He uses it every day. So like I haven't used it in a couple weeks, and I know when I log in today, I'll be like you said, who moved my cheese? Where is it? It was here a minute ago. But if you use it every day, or just use it, because I'm more of a Hindenburg person, or if I'm really going to do video stuff, I'll record it in Ecamm and then edit it in Camtasia. Why? Because I know Camtasia. I've been using it forever, so that's always fun.
Yeah. The one question that you brought up from Gary, and so what that is basically, you remember Descript and Squadcast. I'm not sure who bought who I think Descript bought Squadcast. And so it was a thing that was very separate. And so Squadcast was a way for them to do 4K video, have a conversation, but it still was very much not like what you're seeing here, where Dave and I are doing a live video and he's pulling in graphics and whatever. It's more like, let's do a conversation with live, and then you can work on the stuff in Descript and post. And I think what Gary's talking about there is now it's in Descript. Like, you don't have to go off to Squadcast, do your video stuff. Now it's like all within Descript and in 4K, which could be interesting. I still am not, I'm Dave, I use all of the stuff, but for me, I like to use Ecamm just because it's, or StreamYard. These are typically more reliable for me, but I also use Riverside, because I have clients that use all these different things. So it's very likely that we'll be using this Descript function at some point for a client that I serve. And of course, I want to give it a go and just kind of see how it works.
Do you know, Gary asks, can Descript do word correction if a speaker misspeaks and says the wrong word? Can it be corrected by typing the correct word? I believe they can do this.
Oh, yeah. It's called regenerate. And so what you've got to do is you got to train it with your voice. And so I told Dave I did this earlier. I grabbed David Hooper's book, Big Podcast, and in order for you basically speak into Descript for like 30 minutes. So I was like, okay, let me grab this book, because there's a lot of words I'm probably saying
lots
during
of words.
Course. There we go. And so I just, what would be bad is if Descript said, hey, here's how Chris says the word podcast, and it didn't sound like me saying it, which I say like a million times a minute. So you go in and you train your AI voice, but when you bring in a video, so I'll have a client that says left instead of right, for example, you can go into the script, you highlight the word left, and you type in correct right, and then regenerate, and it will, in the voice of that person, make it the same. Now, one word, probably going to pass. An entire sentence, probably not going to work for you. It just won't. It's just not to the point where it doesn't sound like hello, Dave, now I'm talking. And then it starts talking again. It just sounds like somebody inserted a version of you overdubbing it. So it's not, the AI is not there yet for audio regeneration, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been playing with Wondercraft, which is this tool that you basically say, give me a 60-second ad on this website. So I had it do some stuff for the School of Podcasting, and then you can pick from, you know, Anna and Jeffrey and all these different voices. And the thing I like, it's made for ads. So their AI voice has that voice inflection. It's not Jody Krangle, of course, but I was like, well, at least I don't have to tweak the crap out of this. It still sounds like AI for the record. It's in the end. But the thing I loved is at the end, it was like, and a 30-day money back guarantee. Join the School of Pie. I mean, it was so like, wow, who pinched her at the end? It was really bizarre. So again, as you say, AI kind of gets you there, but not really. We do have, this is something I want to point out. Chef Robert, the happy diabetic chef, says, hey, Camtasia is only for Windows, right? My friend, I'm sorry. That's the good news. If you're on a Mac, and the thing they finally added to Camtasia is if you use the J, K, and L button, L is faster, J is slower, and K is, I don't know what that one stands for. Maybe pause, something like that. But yes, you can now speed up editing in Camtasia, and that's another reason why I use it, because as of probably maybe next weekend, I'm doing my best to lose my PC. It's just sitting here really doing nothing, because I have left monitor Mac, right monitor PC, and I don't know of a single software I use that's only available on the PC. So I'm like, why am I missing out? And when I worked at Libsyn and now that I work at Podpage, it was always, work on right monitor, Netflix on left monitor, and it's just driving me nuts. I'm like, I could easily just have, because with Podpage, I have a whole separate Chrome profile, which makes it really easy. And I'm just going to have this be the left profile and the right will be my personal stuff. And I'm like, but I need 2 monitors to do that. And I'm just, this machine's getting old, and I'm not going to throw it away, because I will still have somebody who needs something on PC. But I was like, my Mac's so much faster, and my PC is probably 5 years old, which is, I think, 1 million in computer terms. So that's always fun. Here we go. Daniel comes in. Mr. Lewis, you have to have one of those higher level plans to regenerate more words. The lower plan can't do as many words, at least the last time he checked. Not that Descript changes things or anything, but
no.
Yeah. So I have, it's, again, AI is interesting. I've cloned a couple things, and I haven't yet to, if I make a mistake. So you hear my bloopers at the end of my show of the School of Pie. I'm just like, and I just take it and go, all right, that's for the blooper file. And then I go back and record kind of to the next or the end of that section. And then I just go back, because there's always a little extra gap from when you hit record to when you started talking. I just drag it over, and I'm like, okay, that's done. Not a big deal.
Yeah, I think a lot of the AI voice stuff is a good Band-Aid. I think it's, somebody called it like when clip art just got released and everybody was doing stuff with clip art. Like, you can't, you'll go to YouTube and you'll see it and hear it. And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm hyper focused on audio and have been virtually all my life, is that I know AI audio when I hear it. And I'll listen to it and I'll know it and I'll go, okay, that's pretty good. That's close, right? It's getting better, but it still is. And there's tons of YouTube channels where people are just creating entire videos where the video's made with AI and the audio's made with AI, and it's scripted. So they probably did a whole chat GPT, if this, then that prompt. And all of a sudden it's just creating this content that is not really, there's no real human involved in the whole thing. It's somebody just checking a box and then blah, 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 here you go. And it just is, who's going to trust that is how I look at it. And what's it all for? Just to play around? I think the people here, Dave, and in your audience, they're people who want to grow communities, and using AI to help you along the way is awesome. But at some point, somebody needs to trust you as a human being. And that's really where I land with all this stuff like, oh, wow, that's really cool. But then I'm like, how can I really use this? How is this going to help me or my clients or the people that I serve? And if I can't come up with something and I've spent 2 hours playing around with some, hovercraft.ai or whatever it is, sorry to hovercraft.ai, if I don't mean to
We're not
slander
throwing
you.
shade.
Right. But I just feel like, okay, if I can use this and I can serve the communities that I do and the clients that I have, then cool, let me lean into this. But at some point, the humans got to be involved in there, especially if you want them to follow you up a hill or pay for courses or buy books or see you live, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Ralph says he's using 11 Labs, and he said he was surprised. They did a great job of cloning his voice, which is great. But now we're on the dangerous aspect of, okay, do I have to do my podcast, or can I just have ChatGPT write a script, throw it into 11 Labs? And it's one of those things where I think it was Craig from Live Well and Flourish said, a lot of the AI, a lot of the podcasting 2.0 stuff, it's like a bunch of nerds got together and said, I wonder if we could get it to do this. And they have. But on the other hand, I just saw where Capshow released a beta version. And I got to tell you, well, I'll talk about that in a second, about how AI doesn't work for me most of the time, but when it does work, it works really well. But I think when you do that whole, I'm going to have, ChatGPT write a script and then my robot voice read it, that's great. Mike Russell from Music Radio Creative, when 11 Labs first came out. In fact, he showed me 11 Labs when it was like a year ago. And Mike runs a voiceover place. And he saw the writing on the wall and instantly started getting into ChatGPT because he knew it was going to eventually, maybe, possibly put him out of a job. And he said, yeah, I don't do voiceover anymore. He goes, Robo Mike does. He goes, if you want to hire me, you're hiring Mike. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. But he found a thing where he was using Feedly, which is an RSS feed aggregator, and when he checked a box in Feedly, it triggered something to send it to Google Docs, and Google Docs went to 11 Lab, and 11 Labs, for whatever reason, would export it to SoundCloud. And I go, why SoundCloud? And he's like, it's the only one that kind of worked with Zapier or whatever. But it was, and it was about AI. So it created a podcast about AI, generated by AI, and it was neato that it could be done. And I listened to 2 episodes and went, yeah, I can't listen to this. It wasn't that great, and it just, and it's weird because if you hear someone with a speech impediment, like I had a cousin, and I'm not throwing shade, and he knows this, but he has an S's problem. His S's are just, they're SHs. But after you talk to him for a while, you kind of like just tune it out. You don't notice it as much. So I know when The Woman in the Tube from Amazon came out, you could say, hey, read the book to me. Even though you didn't buy it on Audible, you could have, what's her name, Lexi, read it to you. And at first it was very robotic as she was reading it. And after you listen to, a couple paragraphs, your brain kind of was like, all right, I'm understanding this. It's not great, but I can now wash the dishes and listen to the audiobook. The thing that didn't work about that is if you use Audible, they have that Whisper Sync, which I've never used. That's supposed to be, if I read it in Kindle, it'll pick up on Audible where I left off on my Kindle. But I've never successfully used that. But, AI voices can,
I think they're functional, right?
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, I think it's getting better. And, like Jody Krangle here's in the chat, and she's also a voiceover actor. And so, that is absolutely a thing. But it's like, you have to kind of know enough to be dangerous about it and just kind of stay, because it's going to, something at some point might pass you by, right? But I think Mike is a great voiceover artist, but I'd rather just know that I'm hearing his voice. So I think I shared this with you when you were here this week. I love audiobooks, especially, when I'm running. And right now I'm knee deep in the new Geezer Butler, the bass player from Black Sabbath, called
another
Into
old
the
reference.
Void.
Keep it going, buddy.
Petticoat Junction and Black Sabbath. You only get that on Ask the Podcast Click. And so, and it's Geezer reading, and he has this thick accent. And at first, I was like, oh, God, I don't know if I can listen to 7 hours of Geezer Butler talking about, and then Ozzy went into and took a dump in the ice bucket, or whatever. boy, that went George Harrison more than it went Geezer Butler.
Right.
But after about 30 minutes, I was into it. I actually was more focused on it because I knew that he said a certain word, and I'm like, did he say guitar or like? And so eventually, so now I'm knee deep in it, and I can't wait to finish it because it's him, and I can't imagine an AI voice doing the Geezer Butler audiobook, or insert another person there, or your audiobook, right? You're doing Profit for your podcast.
Yes, I'm going to be reading a chapter today because I'm way behind on getting that done, and I was doing a chapter a week, and then life hit, and blah blah, and I'm like, before I go to Podcast Movement, because when I come back from Podcast Movement, I won't have a voice, and I was like, so I need to do a chapter today to do that. Jody has a great point. She says, it's a great analogy because Jody's a voiceover person. I'll know it'll get better, but a voice actor will get you what you want in a quarter of the time because of the tweaking needed to make the voice sound human.
Great point.
The thing you'll never hear me say after using an AI voice, that's perfect. It's always like,
that's right.
It'll do. Well, let me cut out this part and that part, and we'll put some music under it. Well, it's the time. All right, that's going to have to do. That's another one. That's going to have to do. Because, it's the same,
Dave, with these softwares that create video shorts and clips for you.
Man.
It's this very same thing. And I'm not going to be the curmudgeon here because, a lot of what I do is actually do the editing to create these kinds of things. But I still don't, everyone's clips are starting to look exactly the same. It's creating this pile of mediocrity where AI is going in, slapping the Alex Hormozy font of captions in front of people's faces while they're talking, and it's just not resonating with people. Sure, you have 15 shorts out of a 1 hour conversation, and probably 2 of them you're looking at and you're going, okay, that's pretty good. Yeah. Okay, I probably would have done this. In fact, I'm going to go in right now and I'm going to start to tweak this a little bit. Okay, tell me how long that takes and how long it would take for you to pull it into Descript, highlight that yourself, and be able to create something that you actually created that actually resonates with your audience, as opposed to, oh, look, here's a bunch of things that it says it would serve my audience and gives me some score based on God knows what. Like, this is the other thing that cracks me up, is a lot of these things where it's like, this is a great resonating score. Resonating based on what? On what you think and what your algorithm says should resonate based on what? There's never any of that. So I think you, the podcaster, you, the producer, you, the person, what resonates with audience. Dave, all these people that are in the chat, what they're looking for. You know exactly how they're being served, what they're asking, because you've been doing it for years. And now you're just going to throw it into something else, and that's going to be great. It's going to be okay. But
it's going to be okay. That's it. It's like, yeah. Because even, it's weird because on one hand, I've had people say, Dave, you play the same School of Podcasting posts or whatever, the spots, and I'm like, yeah, I've got about 5. And, my audience has heard all 5. They're like, what else you got? So then I heard whatever it was called, starts with a W, the thing I just mentioned. Go back in the transcript. You'll see I mentioned it, whatever it was.
Wondercraft?
What's it? Wondercraft, yes. Because it sounds like almost like a Star Trek spinoff or something, Wondercraft,
in a land far away.
Yes. And so I was like, let's play with this for a month. And it is very much like, and the music is like, you can actually add music to it there, but that's where I get really picky. Being a musician, I was like, okay, what do you got in the funky realm? And I'm like, no, that's not funky. That's just bad. Okay. And so what I've been doing is exporting just the audio and then finding my own fun music to put under it. And it was like, it'll work. The one thing
it's
I thought
part
it did,
of your brand,
Yeah, that's a big point, is you have to be careful with that because, you don't want to walk into a building and have it smell like a bunch of ganja unless that's part of your brand, And so you have to be careful because when, it's like when the person uses crayon to make their cover art. If you spent 4 seconds on the cover art, how much time did you spend on the actual episode? And you have to think about that. So that's where I'm like, okay, is this gonna, the only thing that it did, and actually it wasn't the AI, it was just me that I remembered that if you're trying to promote something, like I could say, oh, podcasts, they're delivered via RSS. That's a feature, but it's not a benefit. The benefit is you can listen in whatever app you want. So I was like, wait, I keep talking about courses and community and 30-day money back guarantee, etc. I'm like, well, what's the actual like benefit of being a member of the School of Pod? Well, courses are you can watch and listen to them anywhere on your phone, on your tablet, on your TV if you want, et cetera, et cetera. And I just looked for the benefits because I kept promoting the feature, and so then I took that and I wrote a 60-second kind of radio ad myself, threw that into Chat GPT and said, what do you think? And it threw in a couple other things. So I was like, okay. And then I took that and threw it into AI. And that's the problem. I should have taken that and just read it. And I'm trying something different where I'm having a different person, which is AI, read this thing. And then at the very end, I come in and say, I'd love to work with you, schoolofpodcasting.com. And I'm like, but it's me going, well, let's throw that on the wall and see if it works.
I mean, it's like having someone, a robot to bounce something off of. And I think that's the proper way of using it. If you're just rubber stamping what it's giving you, I think, personally, I can't sleep at night knowing like, okay, I submitted this book and, unless it was for the purpose of saying, hey, I did this with AI. And that's, like Larry Roberts, I know, did that. And he's very upfront about this. Like, like 98% of this book was written by AI so that he could talk about that and utilize that. So that made perfect sense to me. But like, if there's tons of content that's just being generated that is just, from something else. So it's just creating this huge pile of mediocrity where, it's our opportunity as podcasters to do something is to zag when others are zigging and create something that sets itself apart, rises above the noise and, resonates with actual humans while everyone else is just, turning on the fire hose of content. And we're actually being tactical about it, and that's what's going to resonate. Maybe not every time, but nobody's got perfect batting average in this thing. If they did, then more people would do it.
Right? Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's I think I said this earlier, but Capshow now has their beta rolled out, and it says AI generated content dash that's actually good. And I was like, so the thing that didn't work for me, I tried Buzzsprout's AI, I forget what their tool is, the co-host, I think it was. And the problem is I will wreck any AI tool with Ask the Podcast Coach. Because by the time 90 minutes is up, we've hit 17 different comments. And when it tries to write a single blog post that covers that, it's like bad. Have you ever seen bad improv? When you go, I remember once I was at Second City in Chicago. And they're like, all right, give us some topics. And somebody's like, banana, France, shawl, and they're like, okay, and they put together a story where there was an old woman from France and she was cold, so she, it's like, but in the end, you're like, okay, you worked all those things together, but was that funny, kind of thing. And so AI doesn't like Ask the Podcast Coach. I tried one. I do a show called Podcast Hot Seat where you can submit me an episode and give me your website, and it's fun for me because I'm sure I have them as well. But the low-hanging fruit that you don't see because you're too close to your content. Like the last one in her kind of form that she filled out, she wanted to be seen as a thought leader. And I'm like, I can't help but notice that all of your episodes are interviews. I go, how are we seeing you as the thought? I'm like, you're making other people look like a thought leader. And she's like, oh, I never, And I said, at the end of the interview, if you want to keep doing interviews, because part of it was she wanted to expand her network. And I'm like, well, that's working. I go, but the thought leader part, you got to do the Jerry Springer at the end and go, what did we learn today? And throw that at the end.
You think Jerry watched Petticoat Junction and Happy Days?
He might have. He's because he was kind of older, He He might have been, I'm trying to think of an old show. He might have been a Charlie's Angels guy, because he was a little
Oh,
creepy at
Charlie's
times.
Angels.
Oh,
Yeah,
come on. Farrah
pre-Knight
Fawcett.
Rider. Okay, now
Yeah.
I have the timeline down.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
But here's the thing, just
it's a
to
great
finish
point,
that
yeah.
thought. My last episode on the School of Podcasting was all about you really should take time to get in front of your actual audience. Quit learning about your audience and meet your audience and get their feedback. And so that was a common theme through the whole thing. So I ran that through Cap Show, and I said, give me a blog for this, because they're kind of, it's not as flexible as like a Cast Magic where you can kind of say, give me this from that. It's like, here's an Instagram post, here's Facebook, and they have Katie Brinkley's kind of 4-piece social thing. And I was like, okay, I was kind of bummed there's no transcript. I was like, really? There's no transcript for $100 a month? I don't think so. But their blog was really cool because it was like, had this, you pick the, because it listens to your thing and you say, hey, what angle do you want this to go at? And that one, it didn't really work because it's doing this. There was no like, oh, pick out the pros and cons or the good and the bad from this. And it's my fault, operator error, but I picked a topic and then it wrote an article on how to market your legal podcast because that's what I was reviewing. And I was like, that is so far off. But when I did the one where I had a single theme of meet your audience, that blog post was amazing. And it would stop and say, here, insert a picture here with a person with some thought bubbles. And then you'd have another paragraph with a subheading and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, put a photo here with 2 people doing the cha-cha. And then scroll down some more. Oh, here's your meta description for your website. So I was like, okay. So most of the time, I don't think AI works for me because I just have a different aspect of what I'm trying to do with my content. But if you have a single topic, I was surprised. Now, I still read every word of that blog post because all it takes is one sentence to go, podcasting is, be sure to insert the 8-track tape. And there's another old reference, to do something. And then people are like, why is Dave talking about 8-track tapes? So,
yeah, and maybe all of that takes you longer than if you had just hammered it out on a keyboard. But I think this is great because all of us have had interviews where the guest is flying off the rails in different ways. And it's like, why are you going down this dirt road? I gave you a highway. Like, you're not serving my audience right now. So you're using questioning strategies to get them back on the highway, right? This is what, as a podcast host, this is what I deal with every single day with my clients. And so what you're talking about, this Jerry Springer thing, basically, if you've trained your audience, I know it's kind of a bad way of putting it, like training, like like you're an elephant in a zoo, but generally your audience has come with an expectation. Okay, you've caught their ear, you've served them along the way, and you've said, hey, when you listen to my episode, when you watch my episode, you're going to be, in the case of Ask Ralph, you're going to be financially free. Right? You're going to learn something related to finances, and you're going to feel positive about it because it's a faith-based thing. Like, they have that. But if Ralph's got a guest on and they're talking about glove compartments or something like that, he's doing all of that. But if you get to the end, you know who your audience is, and you could summarize that and say, hey, here's what we learned. We learned this, we learned this, we learned this. You're not talking about when they flew off the rails because you know that's not doing that live is very difficult, right? Because you have to really pay attention to what worked. And then when you get to the end, you're going to have to summarize it, right? And that's hard to do. So from a recording perspective, you may want to bolt that on to the end of it and try to summarize it. And I feel like if you could have AI take that summary and utilize that and pull that in, then I think that's going to keep all the craziness out of the AI, because I think sometimes AI just does a drive-by on your content, and they're going to be like, oh, he said blender in the middle of this, so let's do a blog post on how to blend an iPhone or something,
Yeah, the chat room's going crazy. Todd says, I think at least on YouTube videos that the audience craves authenticity. But I like AI, but I don't think it's there yet. From saving time, like creating text and notes, it can be a big time saver, but He also said, I just finished listening to Tom Webster's audiobook. The audience is listening.
Nice.
I cannot recommend that enough. It was a bummer. Both Tom and I missed our own meeting. I'd set up to interview him, and I emailed him. And as I'm hitting send on email, I'm saying I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm so sorry. I got the email from Tom saying, man, because we're all rushing to get things done before we go over to podcast movement. Where's the one thing I want to say? Jody brought up a great point. Yeah, she said, I was speaking, because Jody's a voiceover person. I was speaking with an audio ad exec who said that the folks who come up with ad ideas these days are using ChatGPT to come up with the ideas and then going with something that is not that. Like, it's like you said, okay, everybody's zigging, because something else is more original. ChatGPT is coming up with the average expected option, to which Daniel J. Lewis came up with a great line. He said, maybe instead of saying it generated, we should say it regurgitated, which it kind of is. I have seen when I was playing with having it write an ad, I was using Poe, because Craig from AI Goes to College was talking about Poe. It's POE.com. And what's cool is you log in and you've got ChatGPT and whatever Google's thing is and Claude and blah, blah, blah. So you can say, write me a 60-second ad spot. And when you look at it and go, you can then say, okay, try it again in Claude. And I have found, I forget what I did, but there was something where I just kept getting the same answer. And I was like, well, because it's all based on stuff that's already been done. So if you're trying to be a thought leader, ChatGPT is not.
Have some thoughts.
Yeah, there you go.
I want to be a thought leader. I'm just hanging out here with my thoughts, and I just want to lead with them. But yeah, I think it's great. I don't want anyone to get this twisted. I'm not an anti-ChatGPT guy. I'm not an anti-AI guy. I love it, but I don't love it 100%. Like, I think we talked about this. It's like it's pretty good, but I don't want to be pretty good. And so I want to be able to use this stuff, but I want to insert the human factor, the Chris Stone factor, if I could speak about myself in the third person here, like Ricky Henderson. But I want to insert myself into this, and I think that's what everybody has to, or otherwise you're just like everyone else, and I don't want to be like everyone else. That's the difference. I deal with all these salespeople all the time that are my clients, and everybody has the same product. There's 100 podcast coaches, a day that are showing up all over the place, right? There's only one Dave Jackson, right? You're the difference, right? And so, like, if you're selling a product or you're selling a service, and that's what I do. I produce podcasts, right? And I mean, throw a rock and hit a podcast producer who can open up a browser and play with StreamYard, right? But there's a difference, and it's me. And so I have to work on my acumen, on my skills, and be different. And it's not for everybody. We are not for everybody. We can't be for everyone. And so we have to be okay with that. And that's how we grow, and we can utilize this stuff. But a lot of people, when we have these conversations, will look at me as like I'm an anti-AI guy. I'm pro AI. Like I love to nerd out, but at some point I gotta cut the cord and insert myself, or I'll get nothing done.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, for me at least, that's what you have to do. Inject yourself into it. Like if you're, I don't know, if you're telling a story about anything, if you're talking about, I'm trying to think of something, Patreon right now. Apple has announced that starting in November, if somebody joins Patreon from the Apple, app for Patreon. So if I say, oh, look, I'm in Patreon, and somebody has a link to their Patreon, and I'm looking at this on my phone, there's a good chance it's going to open up the Patreon app on iOS. And if I join there and I give this guy $10 a month, $3 of that is going to Apple. And Apple, it's one of those things where I don't think they say it's not a coincidence. I go, really? Because Patreon came out and said, all of our, producers made, I think it was $35 or $40 million last year or something like that, whatever, the big number in a small amount of time kind of wow number. And it was just a coincidence that literally 2 days later, Apple's like, yeah, we're going to start taking 30% of that just for the record. And I was like, eh. And so if I could somehow find a personal story, which I don't have, I should have thought of that before I started talking about Patreon. But anytime you can make a personal story fit a point, which I can't right now. I'm trying to think of something where money ever. Oh, here's a fun one. I went to Atlanta and I saw why did I go to Atlanta? Because I opened up Expedia and said, hey, how much is it to go to Atlanta? And they said $68 on Frontier Airlines. And I was like, perfect.
What a deal.
What a deal. Yeah, that eventually led to, I believe it was $232 because they charged me for air. No, my favorite thing is, and this is why I always say, I used to teach customer service, and one unhappy customer will tell hundreds of people. And so they double charged me for my seat on the way back. So I didn't pay $17. I paid $34 to sit down on the plane. And once I finally got to the ticket counter, which luckily I didn't get charged $20 for, because if I'd done that before, it would have cost me $20 to talk to a person. But because their system wasn't working and it wouldn't give me a boarding pass, I finally got up there and they're like, okay, here's your printed boarding pass. And oh, by the way, remember this 6-digit code because you can use that to get your refund or your credit because we overcharged you twice for your seat. And so I say that because it's a bummer when outside companies take money that's not yours. There we go. Did that almost connect? I think it's one of the, almost, but
you landed the plane.
Yeah, not very well, a little bumpy, but I say that
did
because
they charge you for turbulence while you were on Frontier, or like if you had to get up to go to the bathroom, did it cost you $14 or?
Probably. I'm surprised. I'm surprised there wasn't like a swipe your card to get into the bathroom,
right?
Kind of
exactly.
thing.
Spirit's the same way. It's like, oh wow, I can fly to Detroit for $49. It's like, or it's like buying a ticket to go see, insert artist here. It's like, where did all of these fees come from? You said it was $49. Why am I paying this? But yeah, I think they're getting better on that front.
And I need to read the articles firsthand. I'm getting all this information secondhand from other podcasters, but it sounds like the fix is just to tell people to go to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome to sign up so that when they sign up via a website, not the, in fact, I have patrons on Patreon, but I actually switched to Supercast because their fees are lower. But I think if you send people to your website, then Apple won't take their money because you didn't use their app. But I was like, I heard somebody hint that no, Apple then is going to, if you do that, like if you put a link there that says, don't order this in the app, go to this website, that Apple might get snotty and remove your app. And I was like, ooh, that's just not nice at all. But speaking of our awesome supporters, we might as well do that while we're talking about it, because we do have the Wheel of Names coming up. And that, my friends, is what I call, if you've never seen this, it's a bright white screen. And when I did this back in the days of when I was a teacher, I would jokingly say, that is a polar bear eating ice cream in a snowstorm, because that is page 8 and there's nothing on page 8. And I thought I did this at the beginning, but I did not. But yes, you can be an awesome supporter by going to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. And the show is brought to you by, we just talked about it earlier, the School of Podcasting, where you can get courses, coaching, and unlimited coaching of that, and awesome community. And you get 30 days to try it out. If you're not sure, you can join worry-free. Use the coupon code COACH. My mouth is just not working today. And have fun over at theschoolofpodcasting.com. We're using Podpage, and I always like to point out that I've been saying this way before I worked there. But that's actually one of the reasons why I work there, because it's awesome. And you can check it out at trypodpage.com. And if I get my finger to work, there we go. We are using Ecamm. If you want to check it out, it's my favorite live streaming thing, and it does recording, and it slices, it dices, it even juliennes. Check it out, askthepodcastcoach.com/ecamm, or check your show notes for that. And he's not here, and if you're like, oh, I really miss Jim, well, then just go over to theaverageguy.tv. But if you need some, fun video work, or if you want to check out Dealcasters, well, then if we could get the wave again, please, go check out Chris Stone over at castahead.net. Thanks for filling in. And now it's time for our featured supporter of the week. and which I believe I can just do that. Nope, I got to hit this. This is where I can't believe I'm still kind of, what's the word? Rusty on, oh, there we go. The button labeled screen, Dave. How hard could it be to remember to go to the screen by clicking on the button that says screen? So will it be, Jody Kringle? Will it be John Muntz? Will it be Glenn from the Horse Radio Network? We'll find out as I hit spin. There are all sorts of awesome supporters on here. And whatever it comes up as used, Chris, people are going to scream a fix. But it's not. It's Greg over at IndieDropIn.com. If you have a show that is spooky or a comedy, there are a couple different genres that Greg has, and you can put it over there. You'll get, and he has an audience that are looking for those things, and then you'll get more people listening to your stuff. So thank you, Greg, for being an awesome supporter. And you can be, why is this not working? This is where Chris is going, why am I on the show? He's ruining my reputation.
I don't have to push the buttons today, Dave. That's
well, here's what's happening is this is another reason why I want to get that. Ecamm was on another month. Like when I clicked on the wheel of names, it went off my screen. And when I hit screen, it went to the screen, but it wasn't on my actual screen, which was confusing. But nonetheless, hey, if this show saved you time or money or saved you some headaches, or if it kept you educated, or if it just made you forget that it's Saturday and you have to mow the lawn soon, then you might consider being an awesome supporter. Go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. And that's right, people. That is a polar bear eating a vanilla ice cream in a snowstorm. Exactly. And, it was a bummer. Speaking of polar bears, I went to the Cleveland Zoo, and one of the things I wanted to see was my good friend, the polar bear, that's been there forever since I was a little kid. And I had my hopes and dreams crushed because it dawned on me that animals age, and both the grizzly bear and the polar bear, dead as a doornail, not doing anything at the zoo. So, but that was that. But you know how I could cheer myself up when your favorite bears are dead? Go to, I don't know what it's called on your cable box. I just call it the dead channel because most of the people that are on that channel are dead. And I could check out some $6 Million Man. Jody had mentioned the Bionic Woman, maybe a little Starsky and Hutch.
Oh, wow.
Rockford Files, that's
Rockford Files.
The
courtship of Eddie's father. I can go on this.
Why hasn't that been Bill Bixby, an early Bill Bixby?
Bill Bixby. And you thought it was just the Incredible Hulk.
No.
Oh man, this is.
Yeah.
Everyone now under the age of 52 is gone out of the chat. So yeah,
that's it. Well, let me hop back to the screen. There we go. I thought this was interesting. Starting a podcast and YouTube. I'm starting 3 new podcasts with 2 of my friends, and I'll be doing one alone. I have a Yeti microphone. Of course he has a microphone, Yeti. And I'm buying an external hard drive and a hub because I want to use my iPad and MacBook Pro. I have 2 brand new DSLR cameras to use. I definitely need help knowing what else to buy. I'm thinking that I need lightning. I need lightning in a bottle. I don't know. I need lightning, but I don't know what kind to get. You know what he means there? I'm inserting an N that's not there. I need lighting. Dave needs new glasses apparently, but I don't know what kind to get.
Lighting.
Yes. Also, has anyone ever used the app Fiverr to contact someone to create graphics for YouTube and music for the introduction of the podcast? I really need help, and I'm hoping somebody can give me some advice. So much advice on this. So my first one was I'm starting 3 new podcasts. That to me right there is like, let's start off with one. If you want to do video and audio again, you can. You might want to consider doing just audio to get your toe in the water. The Blue Yeti microphone, not a bad microphone if you use it properly, but I would prefer. Chris, what's your microphone of choice?
I have a Shure SM7B, and I go through a Cloudlifter CL1 to give it the amount of clean gain it's needed to do that. I kind of go back and forth. I love the Heil PR40. that I use, and I use a Cloud Lifter CLX with that. Don't tell Heil. Their microphones are great without it, but I love that little extra juice that I get out of it. Listen, everybody kind of seems to have started with a Blue Yeti because that used to be the stylish mic. I can't read what this guy's saying. I have terrible eyesight, but it's just there's so many problems with it. And let me start with, if you are not in a well-treated room, if you don't have carpeting and sound treatment, and even then you've got glass in front of you, which are computer screens.
Yeah.
And that is your voice is going to bounce off the glass and into your condenser mic, which is a Blue Yeti, and it's a USB mic, which also can be problematic.
Yeah.
Because it's USB only. You can't plug it into an interface, and you can't make any adjustments there. And so you're really just kind of like, I'm just cranking up a microphone that will pick up a fly buzzing in the corner. And the most important thing to do is to pick up the voice. And that's why dynamic microphones are the best way to do it. And if you're a budget conscious person, you don't look at it as SM7B. Like, you can graduate to that when you've launched 48 podcasts, and you can spend $400 on a mic setup. But if you've only got $50, grab a Audio-Technica 2100, which is always on sale on Amazon, or a Samson Q2U microphone, which I have 3 of them that I've used, that I send around to guests who don't have microphones, because you can plug that in USB without an interface, or you can plug it in XLR, and it sounds fine. It sounds better than fine, actually. It's a really good sounding microphone. And if you don't have any room treatment, you got a bunch of glass around you or whatever, find some fluffy stuff, put it around you. Go in a smaller room, just as long as it's outside of the shot, outside of the frame of your video. Don't worry about it. It's only going to help the more fluffy stuff that's around you, so your voice isn't bouncing off of the walls or the screens or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not about money. It really is not. So if somebody's a budget conscious person, there's no excuse, in my opinion, because a Blue Yeti is actually more than a Samson Q2U.
Yeah, it is.
Technically 2100.
Well, that's why I thought it was funny. He's buying an external hard drive and a hub, and I'm like, okay. But again, because I want to use my iPad and a MacBook Pro. MacBook Pro, I'm assuming you're right. Laptop, got it. But iPad, like, why are you making things harder? Like, don't use. Like,
maybe it's a part of their show, like they're using it somehow.
Maybe.
Which is, that makes things complicated. But I think there was something in there about DSLR.
Yeah, I have 2 brand new DSLR cameras to use. Which the other thing that comes in with that, not that those are bad, but I know I have one sitting right behind me, and I never really took I took the time to kind of go through all the menus and see what it did. But if you don't use it every day, you kind of forget what it does, and et cetera, et cetera. So if you're new to DSLR cameras, yes, you can hit the automatic button and that will probably work. But there is a bit of, it's not like your phone, you got to figure out, f-stops and all that other fun stuff. And then if you have 2, well, that means you need a camera switcher somewhere. Otherwise, you would think, or if you're just recording 2 videos and then you'll later, mix and match and do that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, a software like Ecamm, you could use multiple DSLR cameras in the same room and be able to switch with them with the software. So you wouldn't need like an A10 Mini or something necessarily, unless you want a hard switcher to take the processing off of the computer. But if you're someone who doesn't understand how that works, that can be just a whole, like, just a thing. And so I like to keep things as simple as possible. Like, if you already have 2 DSLR cameras, why are we talking about budget, right? Sell one of them, use, and use the budget to get some room treatment and make sure, because we talk a lot about video here on the show, Dave, and I deal with video every day. But man, if your audio if you are not clearly understood, I don't care what video setup you've got. I don't care if it's just your MacBook Pro and your, if you've got a thumbprint on your lens and your camera gets janky every once in a while. Like, people will stick around, right? People will stick around, but if your audio sucks, they're gone. They are absolutely 100% gone. Like I'm hearing this chirping going on, or it's like they can't. There's just something about hearing that that they just can't. Like people just can't do it. So that on any video podcast that you have, make sure that your audio is solid. I see so many terrible video podcasts where it looks so incredible. It really and I'm looking at it going, ooh, how do I do that? Then I turn up the audio and it's a cavernous echo chamber of voices going on. And I think, oh my God, how did they allow this to happen? I can't be the only one that's thinking that this sounds the way it does. And, it's just a little room treatment and some dynamic microphones that will, hopefully help. Not the Blue Yeti, unfortunately. I'm not a fan.
Not a fan either. Yeah. I mean, Rob Walsh uses one, but he's in he just moved, but he's in an incredibly treated room. He's got it on a stand and it's got a pop filter and it's right here in front of his face. And I'm like, if you're not doing that, don't use a Blue Yeti.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then he asked about, I don't know what else to buy. And then he was talking about lighting and castahead.net. I'm sure you have a link there to some resources for lighting. Do you have any, I know I have paid the Elgato tax. Like I have 2 Elgato key lights here and I've got my Stream Deck so that everything works together. But if somebody does, cause I think an Elgato key light is 100 to 130. I'd have to go look.
Yeah,
right
a
now.
piece, I want to say, right? If you want to get the double package, it's almost twice that much. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't need, I mean, I think the Elgato tax, you can avoid at first. And then if you want to be able to go, oh, wow, these work with my Stream Deck and all of that, that's fine. But I think for the most part, just make sure you've got lights in front of you and not behind you, so you don't look like you're just joined the witness protection program. Get your camera at eye level and get a. I'd rather spend the money on a teleprompter or a plexicam or something to where you're looking into the souls of your audience, as opposed to so many times you'll see a podcast, and I know sometimes it makes sense for people to, like, if I were to look over here, Dave, and we were to talk and it looks more of like an interview setting or whatever, maybe an alternate view, but for the most part we're having conversations with people directly. So you need to have, eye level, eye contact, and that all that kind of stuff is, lighting. It's 3 points of light. You don't need to spend, thousands of dollars on it. And I mean, I don't even know. Oh, they're GVM lights is what I have. These are key lights. So you get three lights. You get 2 on either side. You want to alter them a little bit so you get some kind of depth going on. And then I've got another light that's above me that basically lights me up personally here and kind of cuts me out of my backdrop. And then, add a little color, back here. You don't have to get crazy with it. And your phone can be a great 4K camera that will give you that depth. And you just gotta, I know some people, like I got one client and his light is a light bulb that he screws into a lamp and he puts it off, and we've worked with him to get his lighting proper. And it's not, it doesn't look like he's broadcasting on CNN or whatever. Right. Actually, CNN broadcasts sometimes are terrible. But, all you have to do is just get it to where you're comfortable. And then eventually you're like, you know what? Let me upgrade a little bit on my lighting. But I think you and Jim talked about this a couple times, Dave. You're always tweaking your lighting.
Yeah.
Always tweaking your lighting. And it's just like, okay, I'm looking a little bit more like a carrot today. So I'm going to, try to dial up the brightness a little bit and try to find that balance. But whatever gets you going and doesn't keep you from actually creating the content is really what's important. So if the budget's keeping you from it, just get a light in front of your face and not behind you.
Yeah.
And get it eye level.
Rich says, I hate that Elgato lights don't work with my Google Home or my Woman in the Tube from Amazon. Yeah, that would be so cool to just come in and go, Lexi, turn on the studio. But I guess, no, they wouldn't. I thought if I could get a smart plug, but I think when you turn the electricity, I think I still would have to hit on. Like there's no on switch that stays on. All I need is electricity. I don't think that would work with those.
Yeah, I
What?
feel like I walk and I turn on like 5 different things when I want to do something, but I mean, what am I doing? Saving myself 35 seconds? I just, I at this point I'm not worried about it.
It's all fun and games until your router goes wacky, and then you're just screaming at the top of your lungs. Turn off the living room.
Turn on.
Yeah, yeah. And have you ever noticed how that never works when you want to look cool? My aunt was in town, and she hadn't seen my house since I've been fixing it up. And I walked in and I said, "Hey, Lexi, turn on the living room," and just silence, nothing. And I'm like, "Lexi, turn on the living room." Nothing. And it's like, okay, no,
Who are you talking to, Dave?
Yeah, she's like, my nephew has lost his mind. The other thing he said in this is, has anyone ever used the app Fiverr? It's also a website
Oh God. Yeah,
to contact someone to get graphics. Daniel is in the chat room. My favorite Fiverr story was Daniel at the time was doing artwork for people, and somebody on Fiverr had not only borrowed his artwork to say it was his, which obviously it's a thing called stealing. People do that. It's not good. You shouldn't do that. But they also stole like all of his copy. They just took his website, put it on Fiverr like it was theirs. And I have at times I've gone to Fiverr and I've seen, because it knows I'm a podcaster, so it puts all sorts of podcasting stuff in front of me. And I remember once it was Shane Whaley from Tourpreneur. And I'm like, "Hey, Shane, did you use this guy for your artwork?" And he's like, "No." It's like, "Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting." And my favorite was for when you want like an intro, and somebody had like, "Click here to listen to my work." And this guy had done an intro for this guy using Kool and the Gang, another old reference, Celebrate. And so I was like, yeah, I'm like 100% sure that's illegal. I'm like, you didn't pay Kool or the Gang for the rights to that. So I was just, if I did anything on Fiverr, if I was looking for a voiceover person, okay, but almost noticed, number one, when it first came out, everything over there was $5, and now it's not. It's like, oh, it's $5 for.
Oh, is that how they got the name Fiverr?
Yeah,
I didn't even know that.
yeah, everything was $5. Then that's what it was like. Look, you can have somebody write your name in the sand and take a picture for $5, and it was just like, that's only $5, And now it's like, oh yeah, you can. I will say 3 words for you in voiceover for $5. If you want me to say, a paragraph, it's, 80. So it's a loss leader at this point. But so if I ever got any kind of voiceover work over there or any kind of music would be really weird because that's so easy. Just because you don't recognize it doesn't mean it's not somebody else's. But
yeah, I'm of the mindset of, and it kind of relate. I mean, Fiverr, I kind of put in the same, I put in the same boat as, free. So I want to pay for a podcast host, and I want to, and it's just commensurate to whatever, because I want to be a customer. And then the value of something, when you go to Fiverr, you're going to a flea market.
Yeah,
you really are. It's over, or I need graphics or whatever. It's like, if you do a little research on your own without going to Fiverr, you're going to find somebody like podcastbranding.co or somebody that's going to create something that's specialized for you. Are you going to pay more? Absolutely. But you're going to get the value,
what you want,
of and exactly what you want. If you don't have that budget, okay, you're at least doing it. Again, I kind of equate it to, if this is keeping you from doing a podcast, then, do something that gets you there to get you across the line and start doing it. And then, because your first podcast, nobody's going to listen to it anyway, right? Just get the reps in and just kind of, and eventually you can afford more than just Fiverr.
That's it. Well, I'm sorry for keeping him waiting, but we're going to switch over to actually have 3 people on the show, because we're bringing to the stage the one and only Coach Dave, buddy. How long have you been sitting there? I just happened to look over and I'm like, holy cow, somebody actually joined. So how are you, buddy?
What a great show. No, it's been, so welcome aboard, Chris. And thanks for a good show today.
Coach
it's been
Dave.
Pretty good. My voice is a little bit messed up today, so I'm going to try to plow through what I want to share with you guys. But it was a little bit too complicated to put into the chat room. But I think the tip that I'm going to share with everybody here is one that I hope you find valuable. And it's a way that I've used AI to help me prep for my show. What I do, first, by way of background, I'm an M&A guy. I do mergers and acquisitions. I'm a business broker. I help people buy, sell businesses and things. And the subject matter that we deal with can be pretty complicated. And when we have guests that want to come on the show, a lot of times they're people that have written books, like, Bobby Martin wrote the Hockey Stick Principles. And, you got to read a book if it's in paper, but these types of folks have also gone out and recorded other shows. They've written other blogs. They may have content that's out there on the internet. And so the first thing I do is I train my AI to understand who I am, who's my persona, what kinds of things are my ideal audience. And I just ask it. I'll feed it a bunch of information. I'll ask it, who's the ideal listener for this kind of show with this kind of mission and that kind of thing. And it will spit out lists. But more importantly, it's memorizing that content. And so then the next step is I use Podpage, and I have an intake form for people that want to be a guest. And on that intake form, I will ask them to share with me links to all of their content. Once I have links to all their content, I'll go download their episodes. I'll run it through something like Descript, or I'll run it through something like Nuta, and I'll get the text of that. And then I'll feed all that information one at a time into AI, the same chat that I've already trained as to who I am, as my persona, and who my ideal audience is. And then I'll start asking questions like, please summarize this last episode, right? I don't want to be boring. In other words, I don't want to ask the same questions that have been asked 100 times already before by other guests. I want to have a unique set of questions, or I want to concentrate on those questions that my audience most wants to hear about. And so I'll just walk through a series of questions, summarize the list of questions and what were the responses. Give me areas where all of these different questions have overlapped. So I'll see, 10, 12 questions that are always asked in every single episode. And I know that I'm going to spend a little bit of time to ask the question a little bit differently now, because I know how, I don't want the guest to be bored either, right? You want the guest to have fun. And then I'll go into things like, from the perspective of my audience, just ask, from the perspective of my audience, what might my audience most want to know from this guest? And a few questions will spit out. And then I'll ask, well, give me a list of questions that nobody's ever asked before. And so, and just to take that to the next level, if you grab like the LinkedIn profile, ChatGPT won't let you read the LinkedIn profile link, but there's a function inside of LinkedIn where you can punch out a PDF of their profile. And then you can take that profile and you can feed it into ChatGPT, and you can ask it things like, tell me a little bit about the personality of this person. And it will give you, how do they best like to communicate? Are they visual? Are they whatever? And it'll give you a lot of insightful nuggets that you can use as a podcast host now when you're preparing your show. My entire script is ready to go by the time I'm get on the show. And I actually record now my first intro, which is like the first paragraph. I pre-record that, so I know that it's going to flow well and it has all the right questions and it gives the right energy. And then I'll punch it out there, and I'll have, Dave, what was the product that you used to use all the time for organizing your show? It's Pod.
Yep. That thing, Podcasters something. Yeah. And it was made from a guy that did TV shows. It was almost like a bunch of boxes you would just drag stuff through. I forget the name of it, but yeah.
I mean, you can use any software, but the idea is I have a structure that's sitting in front of me that AI helped me generate. And then
my question is, because that sounds amazing and a great use of AI. Have you had the chance to use any of these questions? Because of course the always question with AI is like, hey, that's cool. what are the results like? As you now use these AI generated questions, are you getting better answers?
I am getting really the answers I'm looking for are not from AI. The answers I'm looking for are from my guest.
Right. So,
Yeah.
because the cool thing is, in theory, you're asking the questions that haven't been asked, and you're asking different questions. So, when you ask somebody this question, are they going, ah, and you're like, oh, that didn't work, or are you actually getting really cool stories, that kind of stuff?
It's mixed. It's mixed, and you get, you got to practice it a little bit. But I start with a very large bucket full of questions and things that I could go.
Right.
I should say directions that I could go with the guest. And then, like any host, you have to feel your way through it. I mean, you have to, key in on the things that the guest is bringing up, and follow the threads where they're necessary to follow, and ignore the ones, bring them back on track, as Chris was talking about earlier, when it's important to do that too. But the point is that, first of all, yes, I think the quality of my shows have gone up. And the measure that I use to judge the quality of my shows is the feedback that I'm getting from my audience. So when people are sending me emails, or they're hunting me down on my pod page, and because I don't have my information readily available, and they hunt me down and they put in, like, the generic, contact me kind of thing, and they fill it out, and I want to hear this from Dave. And when I see that kind of stuff happening, which I have seen an uptick in that since I started doing this.
Nice.
I just think I'm maybe synchronizing. I'm using AI to help the guest and my audience resonate together, and I'm being the middleman to pull it together.
Yeah.
I love it. You're using it not only as a general research assistant, right? And saying, okay, I need to know everything there is to know about this person. What I love about it, and Eric Fisher, who does the To-Do List, which is a fantastic podcast as well, is very much about, okay, historically, what has been asked from this guest, and how can I avoid those questions or ask better questions for that pertain to my audience? It's next level in terms of serving the people who are there to get what you, in like, to your point earlier, it's like, if they're going off the rails, the chances of that happening are far less. And I don't know about you guys, but like a great feeling as a podcast host is when somebody, like, authentically as a guest says, "Oh, I've never been asked that before."
Yeah.
And when you get that, and you get that moment, and then you could just see the passion, hear the passion coming out of them, and it's serving your audience. To me, that's where you want to be. And I think Coach Dave, I think that's brilliant that you're not just using it as a research assistant, like many people are already doing. You're saying, okay, how can I not only serve my audience, but do it in a different way? Exclude these questions that are already asked. Hey, tell me about yourself. Whatever question everyone's already asking them. I think it's awesome.
Who's the guy that does hot wings?
Sean Evans.
Hot ones.
Yeah. Sean Evans was my inspiration behind that. I mean, he asked he always gets that response. Nobody ever asked me that question before.
Yeah, he does. He just did one with Ariana Grande, and he brought up something from like her junior high, and she went to answer it and just was like, and so what was it like when you were blah, blah, blah. And she just was like, not shocked, not like, how dare you ask this, but like, how did you find that out? And if you go to YouTube and type in like Sean Evans, that's a good question. I'm sure somebody has made a mashup of just people going, how did you know? And he'll find old yearbooks and then look up the people in the yearbook to go, did you ever do anything with Ashton Kutcher? And so they get all this weird stuff. And that's the fun part then, is their brain is on fire because they're eating da bomb.
Right.
And then they're like, what was it like when you were working at McDonald's and your manager told you to blah, blah, blah. And they're like, how did you, so yeah. I've been approached not to be on Hot Ones, but somebody at a podcast event is like, do you like spicy food? We're thinking of feeding people spicy food. And asking questions, and I'm like, I do not like spicy food, so it might be very entertaining to watch Dave cry and roll on the floor while I try to talk about my childhood, but I'm not
I
sure
thought we were
that's
about to go Dr. Seuss there. I do not
no.
like spicy foods.
Yeah, I do not like even if I'm in the mood. No, it's yeah. So it's well,
But
that's cool though, man.
Yeah.
yeah,
It
I'd like to emphasize too that it's not just the AI piece. Like if you want to do something like this, for me, it starts with Podpage. And for me, it also started with things like the talent release, that Gordon Firemark puts it together. Like I coupled all that into my pod page. So when people come through the intake process, they have to reveal to me where all the stuff that they're most proud of is. So that really helps to cut down a lot of time. Otherwise, what I used to do is I used to try to call their staff.
mm,
I'd get phone numbers and I'd try to do like
yeah,
backroom research, and it was really hard. It took a lot of time, and it wasn't terribly effective. But when I ask them to promote their stuff, I can just suck it in, punch it into AI, and go.
yeah.
Do you feel, Coach Dave, that like your guests feel like when they're entering the recording studio, however that they're not only just prepared, but they're like, okay, this is a real like they're ready to deliver, right? Because they had to do a lot of stuff. They've seen your show historically. It isn't just some Zoom meeting. This is like a real. This is a real thing. And I think a lot of people, when they have to go through these things, sometimes they'll complain, like, oh, I got to fill out this, and I got to do this, and I got to do this. But the real ones realize that this is how, like, we're working together. We're crossing this finish line together, and it's only going to make you look awesome, guest, if we can do this way and serve this audience. Do you feel like there's have you ever had any experiences with that to where someone kind of sits down and like, this is different?
Yeah, 100%. I think guests are nervous, just as nervous as, I still get nervous when I come on a microphone. It's just, part of the game. And I use that as energy to kind of get my own energy up a little bit. But guests are really nervous. A lot of times they've only done 1, 2, 3 different episodes and they don't know what to expect. And then they come into an organization like mine, like masource.org, which is the M&A Source organization, is nonprofit, and it serves, a global audience. And people might get intimidated, or even listeners to this show right now might think, well, I've got this big Byzantine system to move people through. It's just not the case. I produce every show myself. I do all my own research. It's a one-man show coming in here. I was asked to step in and sort of take over the show from the previous host and just kind of do it. And it's just been me doing it. So what I'm explaining here is entirely possible by one person. I think what they want to feel, I think what a guest wants to feel is like they're in good hands. They want that comfort that, yeah, this host knows what they're doing. They're going to take care of my audio. If I make a mistake, it's okay. I spend a little time with them on the audio. Like I always have a pre-session with them.
Sound
that's
check,
usually 30 minutes. But I'll also, when they first express an interest in coming on the show, I'll reach out to them with a series of templated emails. First, I'll say, hey, welcome, thanks for your interest. Here's the step. Here's what goes. And then I'll call them and I'll invite them to come on the show. And some of that is a sound check. I want to, I want to see what kind of equipment do they have? Are they banging their fingers all the time on the table? What kind of things am I going to have to deal with?
We have a Blue Yeti here. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'll just, I couch the entire thing as, how, I'm here to help make you sound really great.
Yeah.
And so if we have to do this a second take, don't worry about it. And I've actually done that. I had a very smart guy came on my show, and we recorded like 5 p.m. So it was late. Everybody was tired. He was out of energy. I was out of energy. And the whole show was just this flat affect. It was terrible. And we got done with it. And I'm just like, hey, you want to try this again tomorrow? And he's like, could we? Yes, please. Let's do it again. And the second show came out and it was great. It's getting, got a lot of positive feedback. So to answer your question, Chris, is yes. I think that when you properly prepare, you understand your guest, you have a system, you're doing the talent release, that's protecting you as well. I mean, Gordon will tell you all about that in his books. You have, I have a guide, an operational guide that I pass out, tells them about different microphones. Chris, some of the stuff you talked about, the camera, where it should be set, all that's in the guide, and that goes out as a PDF to them ahead of time. So I think it really makes a difference when they come on. So the answer is yes.
Yeah, that's it.
It's crazy though. Sometimes, the higher it seems like, and Jeff C and I talk a lot about this, is that sometimes the higher the level, up to C-suite, the worst their virtual presentation can be in recording situation can be, and they're not reading this document where you're like showing them how to line themselves up, and here's some little tips that you need to do. They're showing up, and it's like you're seeing the spinning ceiling fans, and you're counting the nose hairs, and they no microphone. It's just an open laptop, and it's like, look, you make $6 million a year. Why are you not paying attention to this? But you gotta deal with those things and maybe put lipstick on the pig afterwards. But it's
some
crazy.
of it's just love, Chris. I mean, you're not going to be in this business to make a lot of money. You're not going to be a podcaster to be rich. You're going to be a podcaster because you have passion for the communication and passion for the people. And you really have to love the tech and all these things that we surround ourselves with as an amplifier for a good message, not,
Yeah.
And
great point.
You said your website's masource.org?
Yeah, masource.org is the now my show is on podcast. So we made a subdomain. So it's podcast.masource.org. So if you're looking for the show, you'll find it there.
Yeah, definitely check it out. And Glenn would be very happy because,
don't be boring.
So that's
I think about him all the time with that little Yeah, thanks, guys.
He's awesome, man. But thanks for sharing that. That's you've also just made it in the future. There will be an episode on AI at the School of Podcasting. And as you're saying this, and I'm like, note to self, clip this and use this in future episode, because that's a great strategy. It's not so much just like how are people using AI, that it's actually helping create good stuff. And that was a great example, man. So I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Awesome.
Well, holy cow. Time flies when you're having fun. And this is there we go. Holy cow. Coach Dave, bringing it hard.
He was a good closer.
That was a good closer. Bringing the closer. So, Chris, what is coming up? I know we didn't really talk much about your show, Dealcasters. Where can people find that?
You can go to podpage.com/dealcasters. How about that? But you can also go to dealcasters.live. And if you're curious about any stuff that we talked about from a gear perspective, it's dealcasters.shop. All that stuff's over on Amazon. And next week, Dave, I'm going to be on a Social Media News Live with our friend Jeff C. So that's Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. So looking to serve that community there as well.
Is Jeff doing that from Podcast Movement? Isn't that?
I guess. Is that what happened?
No,
I don't know.
Because that's the day I think I fly back. I'd have to look at my calendar. I just know next week is Podcast Movement. So, yeah, this week on the School of Podcasting, it's written down somewhere and I can't remember what it was. But I know. I'm going to talk about GARM a little bit, which is weird because how do you talk about GARM without getting political? We're going to try to do that dance a little bit. GARM was this thing that was all about brand safety. And I have a clip of somebody who lost millions of dollars. And I'm trying to figure out how to do this on the School of Podcasting. How do you say butt plug without saying butt plug? I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. Sex toy, maybe something. But yeah, they mentioned a certain thing, and the sponsor wasn't happy that they mentioned that thing during the ad spot. So, that's not really brand safe. But anyway, Jim will be back next week. I will be back with no voice. There is a show next week. I'll be back with another fun episode of Ask the Podcast Coach. So thanks for chilling out with us, guys.
Hit subscribe.